She said I didn't fit in her family. The next day, she learned who paid her mortgage. Madison sat quietly in the backseat of Joel's sleek black SUV, her fingers clutching the worn denim jacket she'd thrown on in a rush. The rain from the early evening blurred the lights of the affluent Connecticut suburb through the tinted windows. She kept her head low, nervously smoothing the faded edges of her mother's silver locket, a simple piece she wore every day, a quiet reminder of where she came from. She was about to meet Joel's family for the first time at his mother's birthday dinner, and the idea of fitting in felt as distant as the grand houses rushing past. Inside the elegant dining room, crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over polished wood and spotless white tablecloths. Madison's threadbare jacket seemed out of place next to tailored blazers and silk dresses. The moment Joel's mother, Evelyn, smiled and motioned her to sit between the siblings, Madison's stomach twisted into knots. The room smelled like rich perfume and spiced candles. Conversations bounced from wine notes to yacht trips, worlds far from Madison's reality, where overtime shifts and thrift stores were the norm. She tried to follow the chatter, but the polished veneer felt thin. When dessert arrived, a beautifully layered tiramisu, Evelyn's voice cut sharply through the polite laughter. "Some people just don't fit in our family culture, do they?" The words hung heavy like the scent of dark coffee as eyes turned, biting smiles barely concealed. Madison's cheeks heated, burning through her defenses. Her gaze dropped to the silver locket catching the light, its subtle gleam a stark contrast to the room's grandeur. Joel's face tightened. He looked away quickly, a flicker of discomfort passing across his features. But Evelyn's daughter, Meredith, shot Madison a brief, uncertain glance, something more complicated than disdain. As if she questioned the weight of her mother's words. The undercurrent in the room was thick, pulsing with unspoken judgments. But beneath it, Madison sensed a crack in their flawless shield. As the night deepened, Madison felt the quiet shift, a realization that this family's world wasn't built for someone like her. Yet that small silver locket rested against her heart, a piece of home, a promise from her late mother to stay strong no matter what. The dinner ended with a brittle goodbye. Joel's invitation to return next time felt hollow. Outside, the cold rain hit Madison's face as she left, the echo of Evelyn's words still ringing in her ears. The question wasn't just about fitting in. It was about whether anyone would even try to see her beyond the surface. And as she walked quietly to her car, the locket's weight felt heavier than ever, a silent clue that this was only the beginning of something she'd have to face head-on. Madison stared at the glowing screen of her phone, the curt message from Evelyn stinging sharper than she expected. "Thank you for coming, but I think it's clear we have different values." The words blinked back like an icy dismissal, more formal than the heavy silence at the dinner table last night. It wasn't just a comment among sharp smiles anymore. It was a line drawn, and Madison was unmistakably on the outside. The next family event, a prestigious gala known for its glittering guest list and strict invitations, was rapidly approaching in 2 weeks. Madison's name was conspicuously missing from the list Joel mentioned casually during breakfast. She learned from whispers at work. Her art studio colleague's husband was close to Joel's family, that Evelyn was ensuring Madison would not be part of the evening. The subtle exclusion echoed loudly in Madison's mind, socially isolated, publicly snubbed. During a slow afternoon, Madison stepped outside for air, the spring breeze brushing past a patch of blooming lilacs near the apartment complex. The fragrance softened her swirling thoughts. There, waiting by her car, stood Ruth, Joel's aunt, a woman known for her calm demeanor and subtle kindness. Ruth's eyes held a warmth Madison hadn't noticed the night before. "Sometimes," she said quietly, offering a small, knowing smile, "it takes time for them to realize what really matters." Her words hung between them, fragile but real. Madison's gratitude battled with skepticism. Was Ruth an ally, or merely someone caught in the crossfire of family politics? The vague hope Ruth offered contrasted with the concrete pressures mounting inside Madison's inbox. An email notification flashed, Mortgage payment overdue. Her bank reminded her the final notice would arrive in 48 hours if the balance wasn't cleared. The weight of that ultimatum collided with the social rejection, packing Madison's day full of worries. The texture of her life felt raw, shifting between cold rejections and brief flickers of support. Her worn denim jacket, patched and faded from years of wear, seemed to wear not only memories but the burden of judgment. The looming gala invitation she lacked, the whispered rumors, the eviction notice threading through her thoughts, all sharpened the pressure tightening around her small apartment. At night, Madison sat by the window, the faint sound of distant traffic mingling with the rustling leaves. She traced the lines of her locket with trembling fingers, a token of a past full of love and resilience. Ruth's words replayed softly in her mind, a subtle reminder that even in loneliness and exclusion, there might be unexpected allies. As the clock ticked toward her mortgage deadline, Madison knew she couldn't afford to break, not yet. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. Madison's day felt like a series of closed doors. Her lunch break was already halfway gone when she dialed the mortgage bank's customer service number, trying to find a way to postpone the looming payment. The waiting music seemed endless, punctuated by robotic assurances that her account was in pending review. Each advisor gave her the same vague news: no immediate solutions, and the window for extensions was closing fast. Her side hustle, custom digital art commissions, was supposed to bring in extra cash this month, but the payments were late, an unexpected delay that only deepened her worry. Later, she texted Joel cautiously, fingers trembling over the keyboard. "Could you help me with the mortgage this month?" His reply came slower than she expected, the hesitation clear, even in the curt words. "I don't want to upset my mom or mess up things at home." Madison felt cold, his fear of family drama placed between them like a wall she couldn't climb. She swallowed the lump of disappointment and didn't press him further. That evening, alone in her small apartment, Madison sat cross-legged on her threadbare rug, surrounded by bills and scattered notes. The dim yellow light flickered overhead as the rain pattered gently against the window panes. Doubt crept in with the shadows, whispering that her dreams of stability, belonging, a future with Joel might never come true. The thought nudged a near give-up moment, but her fingers brushed the silver locket resting on her chest. Inside, a neatly folded note, penned in her late mother's steady handwriting, lay hidden. "For when you need it most." The words stirred something steady and resolute inside her. Suddenly, her phone vibrated with a new voicemail. Ruth's voice, calm and soft, filled the room. "Hey Madison, I heard about the party and what happened. I know it's rough, but you're not alone in this. Sometimes support comes from the most unexpected places. Keep your head up. If you want to talk, I'm here." The message was brief, but alive with genuine kindness. Madison exhaled deeply, the heaviness in her chest easing just enough to lift her eyes from the floor. She tucked the note back into the locket and wiped away a trailing tear. There was a flicker of hope, a real, human connection beyond the formal snubs and whispered rumors. Maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought. It was fragile, but it was something she could hold on to. Her breathing slowed as she looked out the window, the first star blinking shyly through the gray night. The road ahead still felt steep, but for now, Madison found the strength to keep climbing. Rain slapped against Madison's small apartment window with relentless rhythm as she sat surrounded by a mountain of unopened bills and overdue notices. The dim glow of a single lamp cast long shadows across the cluttered tabletop, where scattered envelopes mingled with coffee-stained notes and a lukewarm mug. The faint, bitter scent of old coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the dampness seeping from the storm outside. Each crinkled paper in her trembling hands felt heavier than the last, a tangible weight pressing on her chest. Her eyes flicked reluctantly to her laptop, the screen illuminating the tight lines of her face. She opened the mortgage portal again, fingers hesitant as the browser struggled to load the latest statement. Then she paused, caught by something odd, a flagged transaction labeled LF Trust, dated exactly 1 month ago, right on the day her mortgage payment was due. The entry was marked as pending inquiry, even though Madison was certain she hadn't signed up for any new payment arrangements. She scrolled through past statements, but this was the first time the LF Trust had appeared. Her heart began to pound, not with dread alone, but with a flicker of possibility. Was this a mistake? Or perhaps something she hadn't known about? The bitter sounds of rain outside masked the sudden thunder rolling in her mind. Madison's breath hitched as she jotted the details on a scrap of paper. LF Trust, transaction date, amount matching her monthly mortgage. Her eyes darted to the worn silver locket resting on her neck, the only heirloom from her mother. Maybe this was more than coincidence. Maybe it was a clue buried somewhere in the tangled connections she'd barely begun to unravel. Her fingers trembled. The unyielding wall of eviction notices, a reminder of the looming 48-hour deadline from her lender's final notice, pressed closer. Could this LF Trust be the break she needed? Prompted by an instinct stronger than hope, Madison copied the details, mentally preparing herself to confront whatever truth lay beyond that unfamiliar name. The storm outside intensified, rain drumming against glass, mirroring the rapid beat of her pulse. Madison leaned back in her chair, the room thick with the scent of wet paper and dark coffee, feeling the quiet stirrings of resolve amid the chaos. This moment, the night she discovered that curious transaction, felt like the fulcrum where despair might tip into something else. Somewhere, hidden beneath layers of family pride, whispered fears, and unseen kindnesses, lay the key to change. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. Madison typed slowly into her phone, fingers steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. Her call with Ruth earlier that day had cracked open something she hadn't dared to hope for, a glimpse beyond Evelyn's harsh facade. Ruth had been straightforward, admitting she knew about Evelyn's growing anxiety since Joel's father's business stumbled last year. Evelyn's all about appearances, Ruth had said softly, but I think she's scared, not just mean. Sifting through stacks of documents on her cluttered kitchen table, Madison aligned the fragments of her discovery. The silver locket resting against her palm wasn't just a keepsake, it was part of the puzzle. The delicate handwriting inside, the words, "for when you need it most," seemed like a lifeline, a hint from her mother to never stop searching. The bank statement with the flagged transaction labeled LF Trust wasn't an error. Beyond it lay a trail she was determined to follow. That afternoon, Madison called the mortgage company again, this time referencing the right to review clause she'd read in her lender's policy, an often overlooked federal rule allowing borrowers to request full details on any third-party transactions affecting their accounts. The customer service agent, more responsive under this formal inquiry, promised to send her a detailed report by the end of the day. Noting that the typical response time was 3 business days, but they would expedite it due to the urgency, Madison's pulse quickened. The timeline was tight. Her mortgage lender had issued a final notice with a looming 48-hour deadline to clear the overdue payment. Failure meant foreclosure proceedings could begin, and if not handled, she'd lose this fragile stability she'd fought so hard to build. At the same time, her relationship with Joel was fraying under family tension, and her place in his world felt more uncertain than ever. There was risk in digging deeper. If the LF Trust wasn't connected to an ally, it could be a financial trap, an error, or worse, misinformation that would only backfire, threatening to worsen the already tense situation with Joel's mother. But Madison's quiet strength had been forged in hardship and disappointment. She knew the stakes, and still, the possibility that someone within that family, was silently supporting her, stirred a fierce hope. That evening, she took a deep breath before sending a careful text to Ruth. "Thank you for the honesty today. I'm ready to see this through, no matter what." As she hit send, the quiet glow of her laptop screen reflected in her mother's silver locket, the small anchor in a storm she was determined to navigate. The risk ahead was real, but for the first time in weeks, Madison saw a path that felt like her own. The pieces were aligning, and soon, she hoped, the truth would come into focus. Madison stood in the softly lit living room, the polished wood floor reflecting the muted glow from a crystal chandelier hanging overhead. The air felt thick with tension as family members exchanged uneasy glances, their usual composed facades momentarily cracking under the weight of what was about to unfold. Evelyn, seated stiffly in a high-backed armchair, clutched her purse with knuckles pale from strain. Ruth sat opposite her, calm and unyielding, eyes steady as they met Madison's. Setting the heavy envelope on the glass coffee table, Madison opened it with measured care. She pulled out sheets of official paperwork, transaction statements, and letters from her mortgage company. Fingers poised, she pointed to a highlighted entry under her account, LF Trust. Beside it, the name Ruth Fitzgerald was printed clearly as trustee. This payment, Madison said, voice firm but steady, was made by LF Trust. With Ruth Fitzgerald named as the trustee, a stillness fell over the room, broken only by the soft patter of rain against the windows. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Ruth, a flicker of doubt and vulnerability replacing the usual icy mask. Ruth met her gaze without flinching. "I've been quietly helping Madison," she said simply. "I couldn't stand seeing her struggle so much, feeling cast out when she belongs here too. Sometimes, kindness means stepping forward quietly, even if it's uncomfortable." The family murmured in surprise, the polished veneer of control wavering. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, but there was no harsh rebuttal, only a hesitant swallow, as if the truth was settling in her chest like a stone. Madison caught a glimpse of conflict in her eyes, a fleeting release from the rigid control imposed by years of social expectation. Joel stepped closer, voice clear and supportive. "Madison's strength isn't measured by status or background. Ruth saw that long ago, and so have I." The room's atmosphere softened slightly, skepticism giving way to tentative acknowledgement. In that moment, Madison felt a shift, not just in the room, but inside herself. The quiet power of truth, bolstered by the unspoken loyalty around her, transformed the once impenetrable walls. Her locket, resting against her chest, seemed to hum softly, a symbol not just of where she came from, but of the courage to belong on her own terms. Sometimes, the real strength is found in those who choose to stand firmly in someone's corner, even when the world looks away. When dignity finally speaks, who tends to listen in your world? Evelyn's carefully composed facade faltered as murmurs fluttered through the room, like a sudden breeze disturbing still waters. She swallowed hard, eyes flicking to Ruth, her sister-in-law, the quiet force who had just unveiled the truth, and then to Madison, whose calm courage now filled the space with undeniable weight. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, a shadow of regret crossing her features. But before she could speak, Ruth stepped forward gently. "Madison deserved better, and so did we," Ruth said softly, her voice firm yet kind. "It's time we recognize the strength and heart she's shown, beyond all the judgments." Madison's fingers tightened around the simple silver locket resting against her chest. Slowly, she reached into her bag and produced a neatly folded note, now inscribed with fresh ink. "True family chooses you." She handed it to Ruth as a symbol, an acknowledgement of the journey they'd shared. The unspoken bonds forged in quiet support. The note was more than words, it was a beacon of belonging. The room held its breath as Evelyn, her voice trembling but sincere, offered a public apology. "Madison, I was wrong to judge you so quickly. I hope you can forgive my blindness." The family shifted. Eyes that had once looked away now met Madison's with a blend of respect and remorse. Joel stepped up beside her, his pride unmistakable. "We see you now for who you really are," he said, "not just as part of this family, but as part of my life." Slowly but surely, the walls that had confined Madison began to dissolve. The family, once distant and guarded, invited her into their circle with open arms, an unspoken promise that this time would be different. At work, colleagues who had once exchanged cautious glances now approached with congratulations, their whispered gossip replaced with genuine admiration. Madison's mortgage receipt, proof of the secret lifeline that had kept her afloat, found its way onto the mantel, a visible testament to her resilience and the subtle acts of kindness that had propelled her forward. The pending invitation to the gala, previously withheld, was now extended with warmth and sincerity. In this moment of reclamation, Madison stood tall, not as a silent outsider, but as a woman recognized for her unwavering strength and quiet perseverance. The story that had once threatened to break her had instead become the catalyst for justice, empathy, and the true meaning of family. Madison stood at the doorway of the family dinner, the soft glow from the chandelier casting a warm light over the gathered guests. She brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear and adjusted the silver locket resting against her chest. It was no longer just a keepsake, but a symbol of everything she had endured and overcome. Around her, familiar faces smiled with new warmth, and even those who'd once looked away now met her gaze with respect. The past weeks had reshaped not just her relationship with Joel's family, but her own understanding of worth and belonging. The whispered judgments and quiet exclusions were replaced by genuine invitations and shared stories. At work, colleagues who once brushed past her with polite nods now sought her out, curious and sincere. She no longer felt like an outsider on the edges of two worlds, but like someone weaving them into her own tapestry. That evening, as she entered the familiar room filled with laughter and clinking glasses, Madison caught Ruth's eye. The kind woman smiled reassuringly, and Madison returned the gesture with a quiet confidence. The pressure, the loneliness, the near despair, they all felt like distant echoes now, softened by the strength she had found within and the unexpected allies who had appeared when she needed them most. She moved through the crowd, offering a hand to a new guest, someone who, like her once, seemed unsure and tentative in this grand house. The gesture was simple, but full of meaning, an invitation into belonging, a passing on of kindness. The locket shimmered in the light, engraved now with the single word, chosen. Outside, the night air was cool and fragrant with blooming jasmine, carrying the promise of new beginnings. Madison took a deep breath, feeling the steady beat of hope and perseverance in her chest. The world around her had shifted, but the lesson remained clear. True belonging comes from kindness, humility, and the courage to stand tall, no matter where you start. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.